I'm gonna get right to the video. Normally I would have a little bit of what you call like commentary before I say what I'm gonna say, but I'm just gonna get right to it. Illusion, evil, the great illusion. Man is created free. He has left up to himself to conceive his own situations. And man has thought into existence all evil. It is ego absorption that colors everything in terms of good and evil. Never was this brought home to an individual who describes a story. And the story goes something like this. In the pre-dawn hours on the bridge of a destroyer, this individual was on patrol in Sugo Bay in the Philippines during World War II. It is stated that a 40-millimeter shell had just struck the chest of a Japanese attacking in a suicide boat. This individual says that when this person was in front of him, he was so close that he could have reached out and touched his hand. He says the shell exploded and this particular individual disintegrated, meaning that he blew up right before this person's eyes. This person says that the scene was forever seared in his mind, and he continually throughout the battle focused on it insinuating itself into his mind. This individual states that this was the first violent death that he had witnessed during the war. And so he says, surely this was an evil thing, that a man should die at the hands of other men. He stated that a great cheer had gone up when this individual had been killed. He reflected about that if this individual had managed to drive his explosive laden boat into the side of this person's ship, that he would have died instead. So he reflected that whether or not that because his life had been taken, that him and his associates should rejoice. And then he reflected upon, was not this evil to him? And so he said to himself, surely they should have been overtaken by despair that everyone calls evil. So he thought to himself, he stated, he says, good for us, but evil for him. He says, we rejoice, our family rejoices, but was it good or evil? Whose judgment is adequate? He stated as they skirted the coast that particular night, that he stood on the fantail of the ship and watched the wake spreading on the sea like a path of frost in the midnight. Some of the night, he says, and the stillness still is able to dawn upon him. Then the word came. And the word is viewpoint. He says, I felt a joy of discovery. It was the only viewpoint that absorbed me and my limited ego that caused the appearance of evil. He said, was evil partial knowledge? He said, to God, in whom we all know is all knowledge, and evil is non-existent. So he reflected upon himself that what he had witnessed in the death of the attacking individual, had this been simply the resolution or forces by which God was evolving truth through man. There was no victor, no vanquished, no evil. All was God moving toward manifestation of his perfection. With new insight, he recalled the words of the prophet, or should I say, the individual who wrote the book called The Prophet by the name of Khalil Gibran. And so, what was stated by this poet was, only then shall you know the erect and fallen are but one man, standing in twilight between the night of his lower self, or should I say, his self that has not been totally manifested in his mental evolution, and the day of his God self. Evil is the great illusion of all mankind. Religious thought of all ages has seldom offered more than a stumbling solution to this enigma, meaning this puzzle. For nearly all religions offer a kindly and loving God who as yet has created evil and is tempting man with it. Let me say that again. Evil is the great illusion of all mankind. Religious thought of all ages has seldom offered more than a stumbling solution to this enigma. For nearly all religions offer a kindly and loving God who yet has created evil and is tempting man with it. Now it is obvious that there is nothing kindly or loving about a God who visits disease, pain, poverty, suffering upon his children any more than there is anything beneficial about a deity who creates evil so that he can burn in hell those he manages to tempt with it. The very plain fact is manifest. If God is a God of love, he did not create evil. For me, that was very important because I had to know where evil was coming from and how I would address it and how I could transform evil into good and positive, or should I say negative, into a positive. And how do I catch negative thoughts from coming within that are not my own thoughts? And if there is something called a prompt within me which is not positive, how do I permanently evict it from within myself? That is a mental technology and a spiritual one as well. The root is the spirit. And so, with the entire conception of the devil and hell being confronted, if God created the devil and hell, he would have to know that he was going to send some of his children there. And it even follows that he would have a pretty good idea who they would be. So that would give us a God who created the temptation, who created persons unable to resist it, and who pre-condemned them to an eternal residence in the furnaces of Satan. It is ridiculous, of course. Yet the extremely important point is this. As far as man's earthly life is concerned, if he believes in evil, he experiences evil. If he believes in disease, he experiences disease. If he believes in hell and the devil, he suffers all the tortures they offer each time he falls from what his mind considers to be grace. So obviously, at the end of the day, what you're seeking to do is to constantly remain in grace by constantly being in prayer. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm like getting a better understanding of. You know, making the mistakes and then find out what really works. The way you know whether or not something works or not is if it is manifesting or not. The next aspect is man alone has created evil. So I'm going to get back to that. I'm not going to make the videos very long. I know where I stopped at, so I know where I'm going to begin at tomorrow. But my point is this. What I'm learning, which is more powerful than anything else, is if I'm going to be a student of anyone, I might as well be a student of the most supreme God. So even though God manifests himself by the one and therefore the many unlimited, then if God is moving and I see him everywhere, then I also know, based on my studies, that he's going to take a formless and smokeless shape. And so I'm getting better to understand when I'm in the presence of God and what that feels like. So that's direct experience. But in a minute, I'm also knowing what I am sowing, so that way I'll know what I'm reaping. But there's also a way when you get the sales, or should I say the energy, the frequency, the wind of God behind you when you're doing what you're doing. And it's like electricity. You can shut it off or shut it on. But I've also learned that it's a kind of electricity that is on 24/7, by the moment, by the second. So what I'm going through right now is just learning how to access it and know almost like how to charge it like a battery, because actually once you start getting into it, it's kind of overwhelming. And then, you know, like the people that's closest to you, their position, that there's no way that you can know what you know unless, and that's a kind of evil, because then that's like doubt. That's like you doubting yourself. So it's not so much about what people think that are outside of you, you know, family members, friends, close associates, colleagues, whatever. At the end result, it's about your communion, how you're keeping the connection. And that's why I got off into the zeptosecond piece. The zeptosecond to me is very important because there are two aspects of time that's even beyond that in terms of how to create from a subatomic particle to a manifested one, where, like, let's say, before there was a chair, now there's a chair. And, you know, first of all, you have to have a certain mindset to even reach that level. Like in sports, they did a test. They took individuals who shot basketball physically, and then they shot people, and then they got people that were in a room that visualized shooting basketballs. And then what they did was they hooked them up to machines to see whether or not, that when they took them back on the court, who was the most accurate. Believe it or not, the ones who had visualized were just as accurate, and sometimes a percentage point ahead. That's just like with me doing these videos outside, right? Like, there are very few people that look like me, right? So people just see my mouth moving. They don't know what it is I'm doing. They may be walking by, driving by. I'm like a black dot in a white circle, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. You know, it's almost like somebody in your neighborhood, and they're trying to see, you know, really what's happening. But at the end of the day, right, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter, because I know that I'm here for a certain amount of time, taking out my normal elements so I can have a better understanding of how to flow, where I'm going to be flowing at. And then when I'm not in my element, I still know how to get it done. So at one time, I used to think I was alone, right? And then I found out that I had made a mistake. And what that mistake was is that this guy's walking his dog, so I got to, you know, wait till him. Anyway, bottom line is this here, is that I used to think I was alone because I didn't have a physical female companion with me. But I do have a young lady in my life, awesome lady, Dr. Toy, awesome individual. And I said I was going to make a video about her, because without her, it might have, well, not might have about it, it would have took longer, because she really worked with me at a level that kind of like it was like she had put me on some type of vehicle to move faster so I could better understand, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just thankful for her being in my life. But other than that, I've now realized that asking God to be in my life and waiting on him and certain things that's happening, now I know I was never alone. I thought I was alone, but I've never been alone my entire life. But I didn't know it, because I was taught out of that at an early age. And then I bought into it with my own programs, my own prompts. um, not really understanding certain things in terms of the conscious and the subconscious mind, and then you have what's called the super subconscious. So back in the day when I first went to prison, I was studying something called God consciousness, but I didn't have anybody around as a guide. So I was making all these mistakes. So where I'm at right now is just being thankful that God is here. That's one of the reasons why I make these videos. One of the most important parts why I make these videos is because I want to watch them later for myself. My position is, I was looking at some of the areas where it says, you know, do you like it? Do you don't like it? My whole thing is this here, right? If you don't like it, you don't have to watch it. The other thing is, you can look at something else. I mean, these videos are only for positive-oriented people. That's it. If you can't grow from it, it's like changing a channel. You know what I'm saying? But what I found out is that even you can be like really on point in all this, because I've seen some videos and they have so many like, oh, I don't like it. Okay, cool. Here's the whole thing. The way I'm going to find out whether or not that this works or not is the positivity that I bring in my own life and the positivity that I bring into other people's lives. And I will tell you that in the school system, when I was a teacher, I was a very greedy teacher. This is a greedy teacher. I felt that I could reach every child. But I found out the hard way, like that movie with James Dean in it called Rebel Without a Cause. You have certain young people who have made up their mind that not only are their parents not going to reach them, nobody's going to reach them because they made up their mind. So I had to find out that I had to connect with young people who wanted what I had. And there were some that I know without a doubt that I connected. I know there were certain young people that wasn't even my classroom. They would come to my class just to say hi, just for me to recognize that they were there. Then I had kids when I had a real a situation where it was a legitimate reason why I wasn't in the school, and I've actually had kids who came up to me and say, Mr. Bay, you can't take no time off. You like, I don't know where you was at, but you need to be here. Okay, that's it. Well, you know. So, my position right now is that I'm working on a situation where there are going to be people I'm going to reach, but not just student age individuals, but individuals who've moved on, but emotionally and intellectually they still may be like they may be like be in their like late 20s or mid 20s, but they're still thinking along the lines like about, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16. And what I found out is that if God is going to use me as a tool, and I'm happy to be the tool, guess what? I'm going to get it done. And see, what I do before I do what I do is I test it by God first. I pray with him and I wait on him. So a zeptosecond is a billionth of a millionth of a second, something like that. A decimal point with 20 zeros and a 1. But that's how fast, based on my mathematical studies, that God can reach you. So like I'm like open, like even when I turn off this like video, you know what I mean? I'm always constantly in prayer, because I know now that everything that's happened to me, especially my tests in life, either be it family members or what have you, or from my colleagues, or when I've been in certain aspects of whatever professions that I had involved myself for a period of time, it was a lesson there for me. You dig what I'm saying? So now I'm beginning to realize that I think that one of the best ways to be a teacher is when you've made a lot of mistakes yourself. And that way you can teach from experience. Plus, when you got God behind you, he'll put you in spaces and places, highways and byways, that you don't even know how you even got there. And I'm going to talk about that later, in the sense of how I was convicted of a second-degree murder. I think I had about 5 or 6 felonies, maybe more. And they had all the time I had done, and I went right through. It wasn't like it was easy, because I got a scenario that I can speak on that thank God that God was with me and I got in, and it was tough, but I'm coming back now with something that I'll just be a living example of myself. So with that, I'll be on tomorrow. Hope that this is recorded properly. Have a great evening, great night, great life, doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? And big ups on the positive only. Positive, that's it. Peace.